Spacefarer.
But the UFO. I'm here with Dr. Massimo Teodorani.
It's correct. Absolutely correct.
Dr. Teodorani, it is great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Caleb.
It's a great pleasure for me. Dr. Teodorani is an astrophysicist with a special focus on stellar mechanics and supernovae. He's also investigated anomalous lights with the Hessdalen Project and some other places over the years. He's an independent researcher now, and he is an author with various scientific interests. I hope we'll get into a few different areas there. I'd love to start with just general question to set the table here, Doctor, and ask you, how do you think about the UFO phenomenon in general, overall, broadly? What are the ways you approach it as a thinker?
Well, yes, I have to tell you. In the past, I would say 40 years ago, I have to be honest, I collected a lot of UFO books because I saw myself something strange in the sky. But very quickly, I realized that it was quite boring to read always only stories. There were no data, there were only stories. Some also very interesting, okay. But I wondered myself, what can physical scientist can do with that, okay? And especially looking at the way the phenomenon behaves at night, when it's totally lighted, it's like lights in the sky. But this is a photon emitter, okay? As well as stars and galaxies, they are photon emitters. And our job, which is my original job, is to measure the photons, their wavelength, their intensity, and the way in which they are distributed on a surface like a galaxy. So we can apply the same methodology, in principle, in studying UFOs or UAP, whatever is in fashion to call them, but we can use the same methodology. And so, as a synchronicity, I would say, I was at the free market somewhere here in North Italy, and there were books, old books, and there was a book by a good ufologist, because there are also good ufologists, by Jenny Randalls from UK, and the book fell, and on a page where it was written in an appendix, Project Hessdalen. And I saw that someone else, namely Erling Strand and his colleagues, attempted to measure the phenomenon. And the philosophy of measurement, the procedure, the protocols are in principle very similar to what we do when we study, for instance, quasars, okay? When we study quasars, we use, of course, not only optical telescope, but also infrared, X-ray telescope, radio telescope. We try to study the phenomenon in all wavelength so that nothing escapes us. But the other aspect of the protocol that I want to use, we want to use to apply to this phenomenon, is that we cannot concentrate our attention on static images, static signals, something that is so and then stop. We have to study how the phenomenon is changing in time. Namely, we have to study the variability of the phenomenon. For instance, is there any correlation between a color change, intensity of light change, radio emission change with speed, for instance? Why this is important? Because in the same way in which we did in astrophysics, in quasars, variable stars, binary stars, through the variation, studying the change of that are happening in physical parameters that we measure, we can understand potentially the physical mechanism that is going on in this kind of phenomena. So the point is that not that we would like to see if we are visited by someone. That would be very interesting. But for me, it's not sufficient. It's not satisfactory. I want to know what we can learn from what we see through the numerical data from uh, optical systems, videos, magnetometers, radio spectrometers, gravimeters, all instruments that are supposed to be used at the same time simultaneously, and see if there is a correlation between a wavelength and another, a mode and another, hoping to then find a physical mechanism that with which we can build a physics, literally. Whatever the phenomenon it is, it could be a natural phenomenon, and we would learn a lot, clearly, considering the enormous quantity of energy that we have already measured. And it's very important because through that, we might, if we understand the physics, we can reproduce the phenomenon in a laboratory. And this would be very helpful to produce a new form of energy, for instance, very clean energy. So it's extremely important, not only for physics, but also for the human use. In the case they are flying machines of some kind, we potentially would be able to deduce the propulsion mechanism through the way in which physical parameters are changing. For instance, one of these light become blue from red at the moment of acceleration, of sudden acceleration. At that point, we can measure through our charts, and charts bring to equations, clearly, because we reason by equations. What is the physical mechanism? It would be better, I believe it would be better to do so than studying a flying saucer, hypothetical flying saucer, inside an hangar, because it's inactive. It's doing nothing. So we can make it in pieces, but if we don't understand how it behaves while it is flying, we understand nothing. So that is the best way to make how to say, back engineering while the phenomenon is moving in the air or suddenly disappearing or something. And for that, I have ready strategies, because I am a strategy designer at present, on how to establish if what we are observing is natural or not. And I will tell you if you will be interested later. I want to leave you time for your new questions.
That's fantastic. No, I'm very interested in that. Let's pivot right into it. What are some of the lines you would draw to distinguish between natural and technological phenomena?
I would say this. There are some light phenomena still anomalous, but we have a very, very rich statistics of witness, and sometimes it's possible to deduce indirectly the magnetic field intensity, because the point is here, magnetic field strength. We know by statistics, a very rich statistics, I mean thousands of cases, that a ball lightning, which is a very little, like a football practically, can have a magnetic field that cannot exceed 0.01 Tesla. Okay, so we know that this about is a threshold maximum limit, okay, for a ball lightning. But if we see a magnetic field strength that is 1 Tesla or 100 Tesla or even more, we know immediately that this is not a natural phenomenon, but it's a flying machine. And we know how to measure this. People would think, okay, we use magnetometers, and through magnetometers you see everything. Absolutely not. A magnetometer can be helpful as an alarm system, but not to measure the intrinsic magnetic field strength, because the magnetic field strength decreases with the inverse of the cube of the distance. And in some other cases, according to the generation mechanism, with the inverse of the square of the distance. So
which
You
means it
see,
drops off pretty
it
fast and farther away.
drops very abruptly. So if there is a super powerful flying saucer or whatever, or natural phenomenon that is emitting something like a 100 Tesla, okay, and the is 1 or 2 kilometers away from us, we would receive only some nano Tesla, okay. So if we don't know the distance, we cannot know what is the intrinsic. We could associate, the measurement with the magnetometer to a measurement of distance instant by instant, but it's not easy. You have to triangulate every second. Or you could use a radar, because radar, we have been using that in the past, is quite complex, and sometimes it's not allowed to use active radar. Instead, there is a method that allows us to measure directly the intrinsic magnetic field strength using spectroscopy, optical spectroscopy, or in case infrared spectroscopy. How? Well, if the phenomenon is able to produce spectral lines in addition to a continuum, like that rainbow-like thing, but sometimes there are emission or absorption lines. I'm interested in emission lines that are more luminous than the continuum itself. When you plot this line, when you scan all the spectrum and you plot on a chart intensity versus wavelength, you will see that these lines are like spikes, okay? When there is a strong magnetic field inside the plasma, namely a strongly ionized gas, what happens? It happens that the spectral lines are split in two parts. The more splitted, and the more is the magnetic field strength. So from the splitting, the difference in wavelength, delta lambda, we call, and the intensity, the entity of the splitting through formulas that related to a magnetic field strength and other atomic parameters, we can deduce directly the magnetic field strength. Okay, that's the reason why I am concentrated now in strategy planning of high or medium resolution spectroscopy, because only high and medium resolution spectroscopy is able to see difference of wavelength, which is less than 1 angstrom. Otherwise, if we use simple gratings, lines could be washed out, you don't see them. So using a simple grating is wholly quite useless, okay? If there are very strong spectral lines, you can identify chemically which element correspond, okay? But you cannot study the morphology of the spectral lines. So I'm expecting weak emission lines of several elements, like oxygen, for instance, elements that are not from the object itself, but from the air, atmospheric air that is affected by this effect. Okay.
Okay.
Weak, not intense, little amplitude and split. Okay. Not only that, but the phenomenon can be very, very luminous, up to 500 megawatt, something even more. Okay,
wow.
According to important papers, peer-reviewed papers that were published in the past by Dr. Jacques Vallée, for instance, on the Journal of Scientific Exploration, there is a seminal paper where it speaks about a very luminous phenomenon. When the phenomenon is very luminous, we are allowed to make high resolution spectroscopy. If the phenomenon is weak, that's very difficult or impossible, unless we are able to track the light phenomenon using a system which we call pan zoom tilt camera, which
Mhm.
is connected via fiber optics to a spectrograph. If the phenomenon is moving, how to say, linearly, okay, and it doesn't make mad movements in the sky, we can have a very long exposure for a sufficient long time. But if the phenomenon is very luminous, as it happens sometimes, we can obtain a spectrum in only 1 second of exposure. So if you assume that phenomenon is very luminous, you can obtain many spectra and not only one during a time of 1 minute. For instance, you could obtain 30 spectra in 1 minute. And at the same time, if we see acceleration or deceleration, change of color, because simultaneously other instruments are monitoring the phenomenon, then we see how the magnetic field strength is changing when the color changes, okay, or when the speed changes. So we have to connect all this using an astronomy-like strategy, and so that we can understand the physics, because the point is that of course I'm excited to see gray aliens flying on flying saucers or something, or even beautiful Nordic aliens or something. I'm very excited by that, but what excites me more is what I can learn from the physics point of view from what I am observing, because the intention is to publish on peer-reviewed journals of importance and high H index. For now, I published a peer-reviewed paper on the Journal of UAP Studies, which is a very prestigious peer-reviewed journal. The title, the name is not super sounding like a journal of super physics, okay? But there are many journals that are fake, okay? The Raptoring or something. This is a very good journal, and I have to thank Dr. Mike Cifone, who you know, who is doing a very, very good initiative with his Society for UAP Studies, which publishes this peer-reviewed journal. So
yes, and people can go find Limina. Both editions that have come out so far are free online. Anyone can read all their work.
Yes,
your work.
And you can publish technical paper. My one is a technical paper, and probably we could publish more because I have other experiments that I would like to do. So I am a strategy planner. Okay, I have not at the moment any funding. I'm not lucky like Dr. Avi Loeb, but he's brave also. I have to admire him. But you know, sometimes when the money is lacking, the mind is going faster, and so you're able to plan something, because you have to plan something before, because if not, you can have all the beautiful, fantastic, sophisticated instruments, but you don't know what to do with them, okay? So, for instance, the Galileo project, to which I collaborated for more than 1 year very actively, is doing a very good job. They are very good engineers, scientists. They're already installing. They already installed some observing stations, and they will install more of them. But they, at the best of my knowledge, they don't have a plan for spectroscopy with that very crucial test that I'm going to do. So it's very much a sort of a surveillance activity, which highly sophisticated, with a very well calibrated instrument, with very competent people, but something is missing. Okay, so I am collaborating with other colleagues. There is, for instance, a project which is called, very new, Project Armstrong, about spectroscopy, with two physicists. One is Professor Wes Waters, and another one is a physicist, Rex. Oh my God, Oh, I don't remember his surname, but it will come to my name. Sorry, its neurons are lacking at my age. It's Rex Groves. Sorry, yes, that one. And so he's doing similar tests as the one that I proposed. We had discussions. So I'm collaborating with them. I'm collaborating. I never stop collaborating with Erling Strand because I never stop being interested in the Stalin phenomenon per se. Okay, there are some people that are installing parallel stations there. There is already a radar operating. There is a good physicist, Magnus Holm, who is doing very good work, and then I have some observer, I call sky watchers, but expert with the instrument here in Italy that are monitoring the sky somewhere close where I live. Okay, I live in northern Italy, in the south of northern Italy, Emilia Romagna, near Bologna, and the phenomena is on the Apennine that separates northern Italy from central Italy. Uh, uh, Something is happening. These two friend observer have taken a lot of data, and we are asking funding, of course. And wish me luck, and because that's the only thing that is missing. We already know what we are going to do. We already know how to use the instrument. Okay, but not to waste our time to say, oh, that one is moving. We make statistics, which is important, and without thinking to be more analytic. It's important to be more analytic, and I believe this project is feasible. Okay, and yeah, so just to give you a little idea of something of what we are going to do, and partly done.
That's great. So have you recorded any of these spectroscopy adventures yet, or this is a new idea that you haven't brought into the field?
Regarding high resolution and medium resolution, not yet. I already have a medium resolution spectrograph, but I don't have yet this kind of data. I have spectra in low resolution mode, which shows a spectrum that can change. It's very different from spectra of stars. It looks like fluorescent lights. Sometimes looks like LED lights with the peaks, blue, red, and white peak, for instance. It's very similar to that, but it's not easy to see the lines that I would like to see, which you can see only with high or medium resolution. So we have that, and through our videoing, I was able, for instance, to understand the reason why the phenomenon in Esdalen, for instance, but not only there, but also in other areas like Min in Australia, for instance. The reason why the phenomenon is changing is luminosity. Sometimes it seems they inflate, they become very luminous, they pulsate. The reason is not because the light itself pulsates, but it's because many lights all of a sudden appear around the central light, and when you see them from far away, you don't see, you are not able, the eye, even a telescope or camera is not able to resolve. But sometimes when you zoom, you see that there are many little light around the common barycenter. So that contributes to the increase of luminosity. Clearly, we don't know what is the reason of this, but there is that, and then we videoed the phenomenon in Esdalen already in the past, and we see how it seems an electrocardiogram substantially, the variability of the light. It's something that tries to turn on, and then at the end it is able to turn on. It continues for several minutes, and they're all abruptly fade out. Okay, so that one looks like to me, a kind of natural phenomenon. And in Esdalen, as well as in similar places of the world, it's very reasonable and rational that it is a natural phenomenon. But I will tell there is more. Because the area of Esdalen, as it has been demonstrated by French, Greek, and Norwegian scientists that collaborate with them, the soil is very electrically conductive. Also because of presence of a lot of copper or something. And there could be the so-called piezoelectric effect. When rocks containing quartz, for instance, but not only quartz, crash together for some reason, sometimes due to the ice that compresses them, you can liberate electricity in the air, which could ionize the air above, creating a plasma situation. But this is a good reason, okay, as a trigger mechanism. But what we don't know yet is what keeps these lights in long lasting, okay?
Yeah.
And
why would it not just be a spark or a blast of light?
Exactly, and they remain so for a very long time. Even if they pulsate, they would lose energy almost immediately after a few seconds. This is physics. Instead, there is some mechanism, maybe magnetic, that is confining the plasma in a very limited volume, limited space, and this is quite a mystery. But it seems to be a natural phenomenon per se. If not, something exists that complicates the picture, because sometimes in Esdalen and in similar places, it happens the same. You see these plasma lights, okay? There is no shape, no, just spheroids, except that sometimes acquire geometric shape. This is very mysterious. Like rectangles. I took a photo of that. But normally you don't see a solid structure shape. Sometimes you can see structured objects in the sky. And this cannot be denied. We have to tell this. I saw something in Stalin, like flying triangles, or like a double blinking red light landing in the wood where there is no helicopter pad or nothing like that. Something structured is overlapping over an apparent natural phenomenon, like if it is interested to that natural phenomenon, or like if it wants to suck energy from the ground for its propulsion mechanism. Okay, this is it's like it goes there to make a gasoline, practically, like we do with the car. It's funny, but it's only an hypothesis, this one. So the thing is not so simple, okay, because there are some colleagues that say, of course, it's a natural phenomenon. Flying saucers do not exist. I am a scientist. A scientist has the duty to take into account everything, also what is not very comfortable, okay, or not politically correct, like I like to say. We have to take into account that. And unfortunately, we didn't take measurement data of these flying things.
The triangle, you didn't get any recorded data on that.
It was impossible, and because these phenomena occur strangely when our instruments are packed inside the car. It happened also in Canada. I was on the Ontario area with a colleague. We had measured a strange signal in the VLF range, which is something like 3,000 hertz, okay, radio, in the radio band, very long waves. But nothing was in sight. We stayed there for a long time. We ascertained that that signal is real and not caused by interference with the computer, intermodulation, because other instruments obtained the same result. At some point, it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the night, and we, okay, it's time to go to bed. Just after we packed, all the instruments in the car. There were two things that were lifting in the air and going parallelly. We couldn't record them at all. Another time was in Stalin with the triangle. We didn't even have anymore the video camera because our colleague in the year 2000 had gone back to Italy. So we could only witness, we were 5 witnesses. This thing with the 3 lights at the vertex, I could see with the binocular quite well. It was a dark gray, fuselage. And I could see that because there was a residual light in the sky in summer in the Nordic countries. So I could see that very well. It came over us. It stopped over us and it started to rotate. It hovered. And then it was not that it flew away. No, it simply disappeared over our heads. While the lights were fading out very slow, disappeared literally. So another time,
I also, sorry, while we're here in the triangle, I heard you describe 2 other parts of this story, and I just wanted to bring them into this narrative. Yes. One was that it was soundless, and the other was that you called a colleague who you knew nearby who had access to some radar data, and that person told you that he was asked to delete that data by military or government forces later that week, which suggests that somebody knew something about that craft, whether or not it was human or from some other kind of agency.
Where did you hear this? Are you a Russian spy or something? No.
I listen to all your podcasts, comrade.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes, I remember there were 2 technicians, radar technician of a NATO air base. I think they were Norwegians, but they were short and they were not looking Norwegians. But anyway, I asked them if you see something, because they came to see what we were doing at the Blue Box in the year 2000, so 25 years ago. I told, if you see something, please send us the data on the radar. Someone, I cannot tell who because this is delicate, said that the captain of the base ordered them to delete the boogie signals. So you see, these are precious things because it's not only the fact that you have something on radar, but also the kind of radar track per se could give some physical information on the object that is seen. So nothing, and I don't understand because I understand the aptitude of the military. I support them, of course, but I don't understand why they don't understand that the knowledge of the physics of this could be very important for them in order to understand, for instance, what kind of warhead to use in order to be completely not affected by countermeasures or something. If you know the physics, then you tailor the project of a missile. I mean, I'm not militarist, but in that way. So we could help them, of course. And not only, but morally, ethically, we understand that we have a duty not to tell to the public because it's a strong responsibility if it is a threat. I don't think it's a threat, but it could be. We have to be silent and tell them what's going on, helping them, not something. We are not persons that go on, now we go to the Russians and tell the secrets. That absolutely, we are not interested in this kind of thing. Interested only in the physics of the problem, what's going on.
Yeah. So let's linger on these physics for a second, and we'll just click into Hessdalen briefly. We can move on to other areas, but you did spend some time with them, and my loose understanding of this situation is that Hessdalen is a relatively small. It's a small town, only like 150 residents,
yes.
and there's a fairly contained area. I think I heard you say about 50 square kilometers where
more or less, man.
Okay. There have been phenomena of various light shapes and motion qualities
Yes.
observed for. We're getting close to 100 years now. I believe the first observations show up in the 1930s, and they've been of interest since then. With various degrees of scientific rigor, people have investigated them.
Yes.
And my loose understanding is that you helped them move from their early paradigm into a more modern technological paradigm. And when I last heard you speak about this, you were sort of looking to the future and thinking what new kind of equipment they could potentially install. You are not currently actively working with this group anymore, but you have mentioned that there are other hotspots around the world where other things like this happen. And at the core, there seems to be some kind of fascinating natural, probably phenomenon, although, as you have mentioned, it could potentially be technological, which is very interesting and has not yet been well described. So one thing I want to ask you is, why do you think it's been so hard to nail down the answer to this question? I've seen lists of maybe like 15 good potential explanations. And secondly, what are the leading theories for you? Am I right that your dominant theory currently is that this is some kind of plasma behavior contained by some kind of magnetic field?
Yeah, if we consider the plasma ball only them, and we exclude the alleged flying things that fly there are many theories. Okay, everyone want to sell its own theory, but they they close their eyes to other factor. One theory can be good only if it is complete, not only if it works well, if the equations are giving consistent results. You have to take into account all of the evidence, not only what you like more. Okay, there are at least I would say 30 theories. Some are very, very interesting. For instance, there is a French professor whose name, what was his name? Oh, well, I forgot. It will come to my mind. Anyway, he thought of something astrophysical, that there could be a mechanism caused by the sun, and there could be a sort of wormhole, very narrow, 1 millimeter or something, that connects the sun with the Earth's atmosphere. And only matter cannot pass through because it's very little, but radiation can pass through. And on the opposite side, on the Earth part, it could ionize the atmosphere, but it would move randomly. Okay, it's not stable. So we would see something moving in the sky randomly. It's something like a radiation coming from the sun, moving inside this wormhole, this tube, reaching Earth, and only through an opening that is very little. This would help plasma to pass through, but only plasma, not matter or something. And this plasma would ionize the atmosphere and create apparent light balls in the sky. This is elaborated theory, and it's very, very original, but I do not think that this is the real case. It could happen in other locations in the world, because not all the locations where the phenomenon appear have the same geophysical situation. So there could be different causes in one place than in other places. For instance, if there is a radon gas that is coming from the ground, particularly in some places, that radon gas can ionize the atmosphere very efficiently. But in some other places, there is no radon gas. Okay, so you can have, for instance, in Marfa, Texas, that could be one reason. And or could be bubble of methane gas, for instance, coming from the sea, from the water. When they come out, there is oxidation and they burn in the air. And this could have happened in Italy, in the North Adriatic, which I have seen from where I was living before. The other one is the piezoelectric theory, which I think is the most flexible, how to say, because it's the one that triggers, electricity in the air. But there is no theory of my knowledge that explains why these light bulbs are so self-contained. Okay, I had a qualitative theory. Okay, if you want, you have to imagine a mini star. Okay, something that works like a star. Stars are working like there are two forces. Okay, the sun is a plasma substantially that is controlled by gravity and by nuclear fusion effect. So on one side you have gravity that attracts things to the inner part, and the other one is pressure of hot gases that go outside. Okay, the sun is self-contained because of gravity. Okay, otherwise it would expand and melt out. So imagine something that is not like the sun, but it is some meters big. To do that, you need a central force that simulates gravity. It could be a mini black hole, for instance, because the idea of mini black holes is supported by some scientists that were formed at the time of the Big Bang. Okay, and some of them could be able to enter inside the atmosphere as a component of cosmic rays. If one enters the atmosphere, it would make the air around collapse and then become hot. There is another physical law that says that when a magnetic field is compressed, it will be strongly amplified. So if during the collapse you have compression of the natural magnetic field, Earth's magnetic field, this magnetic field would help the central force, maybe mini black hole, to contain the plasma as a magnetic cage, okay, to prevent the plasma from going out. And it would work like the magnetosphere of around Earth in the reverse. The magnetosphere is protecting us from solar coronal mass ejection. In this case, it would be the opposite. It would prevent the plasma to go out. Okay, and so you would have this kind of machine, but it's a very qualitative mechanism. It could be that. In this case, it would come from the space, and it's logical that it happens in a northern area because it's easier for cosmic rays to reach the ground because the magnetic field lines are opened at around the poles. So particles enter through the holes, and that's the reason why you see aurora borealis at those latitudes. Okay, so that is a possibility. Okay, but if I have to tell you, we explained we have a unified theory about this phenomenon. No, we don't have. We have been thinking a lot, more or less mathematically, and but we don't have yet. There are some physicists that are very brilliant. They are proposing their own theory, but doesn't take into account anything else. Instead, you have first to study very carefully what is happening, okay, and then see if a theory exists that explain all of them, okay, and we don't have yet.
And you mentioned there are other hotspots around the world, which would maybe challenge this idea that it had something to do with the northern region and the cosmic rays. Because I don't know, Joplin, Missouri, I think I've heard you mention. You
I know
said
that
something about North Carolina. Could you just quickly tell us, are there differences between these various hotspots in terms of the kinds of phenomena recorded there, or are they all pretty similar to Hessdalen?
Apparently, many of them are very similar. Joplin lights, Brown Mountain lights, Yakima lights, Cape Fear River lights behave in a very similar way.
So two things jump out there. One is that this phenomenon is widespread, but second is that it is appearing locally, which suggests, like, as in it's not everywhere. So it's not like these lights just show up all over the globe.
Apparently so, yes.
But they are showing up specifically in places, like in contained areas, and they are similar to each other. So does that suggest that there's something about these places that either, they're easier to connect to the sun via wormhole, or they have some like geo quality, like a quality of the soil, or
should
magnetic
make
fields?
There must be a space Earth connection in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So cosmic rays inevitably should interact with the atmospheric electricity. They are particles, so they interact. For instance, when we have a solar storm, you have a strong injection of particles like electrons, and when these electrons collide in the ionosphere, you have an outburst that can create a lot of problems to us. Okay, so I expect that there is a connection with space and Earth. Okay, but there must be some correlation with the geological situation. You need particular kind of minerals, for instance, quartz or even basalt, or copper, or minerals that are very electrically conductive. That you need that. Or if you want to go into the realm of sci-fi, well, there could be areas of Earth in which there are some kind of portals, let's call them, but something that I don't like the term. It's very new agey.
I know that one made me roll my eyes too. Portals, it's a challenging word for me.
In the sense, it's for me too. In the sense that I would call maybe natural wormholes. We don't know this. There is no theory that explains that. There could be some places on Earth and in space where there are these gravitational anomalies. So in that case, everything could enter easily. In particular, particles from space, they would enter there. They would not blocked by the magnetosphere, and they could create all this kind of problem. So it could be, there could be a relation with the location, but we don't have yet a picture of that. We would need a space investigation from space, using high resolution gravitational and magnetic monitoring from space of Earth, but very high resolution, in order to see if there are anomalous zones, for instance, with the gravimetric anomalies, and then to see if there is a correlation between these anomalies and the statistics of UFO sightings. I did an attempt to do this in the past. It was 16 years ago. Was it? Yes, in 2009, I investigated. There was already monitoring data from space of gravimetric and magnetic anomalies on Earth as seen from space. And I wanted to see if there is a correlation with the number of sightings in 3 specific states of your country, namely New York State, Connecticut, and the province of Ontario, because it was In one of them that I went with my colleagues one colleague in 2009, what I found is that there is no correlation between the number of sightings and these anomalies. Not only the number of sightings, but you have to make a ratio between the number of sightings and the number of inhabitants. What is interesting is when um, um, towns or hamlets with very few inhabitants have a lot of UFO sightings, then you say, well, that must be very important. But I didn't find anything interesting. So probably we need some more advanced, much higher resolution gravitational measurement from space and redo the measurement. Science is so you have to try many times. And here we are working. It's like we are walking in the darkness with a band in the eye, like blindly. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's so.
Do you know if anyone has tried the minerals approach? Like, has anybody gone to hotspots with lights and tried to just get a read on what's in the soil and like measure the percentage of copper and
They did
basalt?
it.
Yeah.
They did it. This is not my field, but there were geophysicists from France and from Greece, in particular, that they analyzed the kind of minerals.
Specifically in Hezbollah?
Specifically in Stalin, yes.
Okay.
Probably also in Marfa.
Okay. I'm curious about the correlation or
Yeah, I know.
comparison.
Of course, it's very important what to say, but so far there is not a picture that is very clear. Okay, so this research is in the beginning, and unfortunately, it's very little funded. This is the biggest problem because we have several brains to study that, but there is a little funding. We would need only something like $1 million, okay, to do very well the test that I am proposing, namely buying a Panzoom tilt camera, paying a software guy to make the software, buying a high resolution spectrum of $1 million, paying also for mission something, to make a huge advancement, okay? And this would be at least a factor 1,000 less than what we spend every year at CERN for nuclear research, okay? So only a little fraction of what we have, we can have for research could help us to make a huge advancement in fundamental science. Because even if something is caused by flying machine in the air, we would learn a lot from the physics of the problem. We could deduce a lot of things, and it would be a huge advancement for science. And this makes me very frustrated and angry, if I must be honest. Yes.
I'm pretty upset about this too, actually. I've been writing my local representative to ask them to specifically allocate funding from the National Science Foundation in America to projects that research UAP. I think that's an important step. And I wanted to ask you, is the European Space Agency interested in funding any of these activities, or have they been turning up their nose so far?
Well, I would say at the present time, yes, there were auditions in the European Parliament. There were some astronomers, like one astronomer in particular, Dr. Beatrice Villarroel, who did important research. And I suggest you to interview her because she has a lot of interesting things to tell.
I would love to speak with her. I've been reaching out.
Beatrice Villarroel, she is from Sweden. But the name looks like Spanish. But anyway, she's from Sweden. She's very brilliant. And she participated there. There were some serious ufologists. But I didn't see any, I would say, result, any obtainment of funding. I also have been to the European Parliament in 2010. I gave a big conference in front of several nations, speaking about scientific, proposal, how to study these things. But there was not a big interest, and
Mhm.
many politicians have a very naive idea of UAPs. They think already about gray aliens or something. They think that it's a fantasy. Most of them think so. They don't
Mhm.
know that there are physical scientists that are studying seriously these kind of things. But there is an exception, and this exception exists since at least 50 years, I think. I might be in error, but it's the JPAN, which is organization, French organization in France, that studies UAPs in a scientific way, mostly statistical way, because they do analyze witness cases, and from the information that they obtain, they try to deduce several things, like what was the weight of the object that landed allegedly, what was the possible magnetic field intensity. So yes, there is this organization, JPAN, that, by the way, I participated 10 years ago with a talk of mine there, where Dr. Jacques Vallée was present. And so there is something, but there is not the UFO circus that I see in the United States, probably.
Unfortunately, even in the
Yeah,
United States, the funding is borderline zero. There is
yeah,
no public funding at all. I think people really don't know this, and it's one
yeah,
of the hardest problems in the space. Even the Galileo Institute, they got all their funding privately, as far as I understand. There was no
yeah.
National Science Foundation grant for
No.
that, and there is no area of research that these public bodies are funding just to say, tell us what you'd like to research, and we'll allocate X amount of funds for that. Are there private orgs on your radar that you can write grants to request money from? Is that something that's starting to happen? I'm seeing a little bit in America, just anecdotally. There's an intersection of the crypto space, like the cryptocurrency space, with some UAP research, like the guys who are funding the Skywatcher people. They're pretty closely connected with the cryptocurrency world, and I think partly that's because the crypto guys are outside the box thinkers. They're sort of like skeptics of the structural institutions, and they're a little more willing to take a chance on some of this fringe science. And then you've got like weirdo billionaires like Yuri Milner funding the Starshot initiative to get to Alpha
Yeah, no,
Centauri. It seems like somebody in that kind of eccentric money world might be our best bet to get a few $1,000,000 here and there. As you say, it's really peanuts compared to some of our other big scientific investments. So are there any private orgs on your horizon that you're thinking about shaking your head?
not in Europe, at the best of my knowledge. Maybe there are some private people who would like to give some donation, like 10,000 euro, 50,000 euros, but I don't know any. I remember once in the year 2000, there was a count with a symbol with they wrote to me and told, I would like to finance your research. I was stupid because I am a person who doesn't trust people. Okay. I thought this guy was not a real count, but only that he wanted to know information from me, because
Uh-huh.
it's not a myth that people who is involved in this research is controlled by whom you can imagine. Okay. In the past, I have been, and so I was not trusting, but maybe in that case I did a mistake. Okay, so but we don't know of any Yuri Milner kind of financier that could help us in this. Yuri Milner, anyways, doesn't seem to be interested in this kind of research. Breakthrough Starshot is a standard project by Avi Loeb, of course, and of course it's more, I would say, institutional. Okay, and the point is that yes, we have to have um, to search for private founders, and the United States is much better than Europe in this. But we have to try anyway to divert this funding to the institutional departments, okay, in the sense that I am a PhD physicist, okay, with a long experience in astrophysics and everything. But working independently, if I am financed by a Yuri Milner guy and I publish by myself, I would be more important as a janitor at a university than a PhD working independently. Okay,
Interesting.
this is how it works. It's important to which department you belong. Of course, I've been working with departments at the National Institute of Astrophysics, both in Bologna, both in the south of Italy, both in radio astronomy and optical astronomy, but not now. I'm old, by the way. So,
You look
but
great.
well, thank you. I'm teaching, by the way, I forgot to tell you that I've been teaching as an instructor and professor with, what is that? The Society of
Society.
UAP Studies,
Great.
because Dr. Cifone had a wonderful idea to promote courses in interdisciplinary specialization. They're expert in physics, sociology, philosophy, and I've been teaching longer courses to people that could be of interest. If I can repeat them, I gave 2-year academic years. So
That's wonderful. We'll connect to that. People should look that up if they're interested in taking your course on SUAPS. I think that's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. I wonder if in our sort of back third here, we could engage with some experimental ideas. I liked your point about thinking analytically. And I wanted to quickly ask you, given that we're looking at these interesting phenomena, doing various cool things, I wonder if you have a line for yourself that you would consider evidence of non-human intelligence in these kinds of behaviors. Like, do you have some ideas of what behaviors would make you think, that qualifies as being potentially intelligent? And then a similar but distinct question, do you have some ideas about what evidence, if any, might suggest an extraterrestrial origin or a different kind of origin for such intelligence? We're speaking in the sort of hypothetical, analytic, logical space here. But I was curious about your thinking on this.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that. I also published something. There is a fact that this is a witness. Okay, several people also in these areas here, but also abroad, told me those lights are speaking in my mind. Okay. They told, I don't tell my name because it's discrediting. No, don't worry. But many told me this. So one idea is that this kind of phenomenon can create an electromagnetic field that could affect your brain and induce hallucinations. Okay, and this was demonstrated by Canadian professor with his famous helmet, God helmet. When you put magnetic pulsing field in your brain in a lab, you can trigger hallucination of several kind, and this hallucination take a shape different according to your belief system. If you believe in the Virgin Mary, you see the Virgin Mary, or see the devil, or you see the gray aliens. Okay, so this one, Michael Persinger, this is the professor, famous, or it's something real. The point is that how can we demonstrate scientifically this? Because suppose I meet tall white. They are very much in fashion now, as I noticed. Very thin, long, Nordic looking, but quite very scary. Okay, and he speaks with me, and we're here. We come from wherever, and okay, how can I demonstrate that? even if I video, I would have to ask, give me a sample of your DNA. And everyone would think, anyway, this is CGI. Okay. So no one would believe that. But the alleged interaction between these plasma balls, okay, and people can be measured. There is a guy, what is Chris Bledsoe, somewhere in the United States, who says he published a book, okay, and he filmed also these lights. Okay, the idea is to monitor the brain of a experiencer, of a person that is, while the phenomenon is appearing like a Stalin light, at the same time in which you are monitoring the light. Okay, for instance, and you monitor the brain using EEG apparatus. Okay, my idea is to use a laser, a powerful laser, to stimulate the light and see if something is happening in the brain wave of the experiencer. So, is there a synchronicity? Is there an entanglement between the brain and the phenomenon? Okay. Or conversely, we could use an helmet like Michael Persinger was using in a lab. We induce a strong magnetic field in the brain of the person and see what's happening at the same time in the light. So is there an interaction of any kind? Okay. Then I come to the point. There is also a theory about the plasma light that could be a life form. Okay. And this is quite serious in reality because it dates back to the studies of quantum physicist David Bohm. It was his own PhD thesis. He discovered that plasmas have a very cooperative behavior, like if they were only one thing. Okay. Then there were the studies of a group of biophysicists and computer scientists that discovered that plasmas, they made a numerical simulation and also experiments in space using the old Mir Russian space station that noticed that if you put a plasma and you make it interact with the dust, particularly dust particles, the plasma acquire elliptical shapes identical to the DNA that can be able to replicate like the DNA. Okay. Sometimes these plasmas, in particular condition, show a quantum behavior, namely quantum coherence, in the sense that all the particles of the plasma behave like if they were only one thing. Technically, they are described by only one wave function. Okay. But this is extremely similar to the theory, identical, of Roger Penrose, Nobel Prize for Physics, and Stuart Hameroff about the brain. They think that the consciousness moments in the brain are due to the collapse of the wave function that unites all the microtubules that are in the brain inside the neurons. Every time there is this spontaneous collapse, you have a consciousness moment. My question is, what if the plasma particles assume the same behavior as microtubules in the brain? Then we would have a kind of intelligence, a kind of consciousness. And it's interesting because this could be triggered by a laser. In fact, Erling Strand in 1994, during his pioneering experiment, aimed a laser against one of these lights, which was pulsating. And every time that he was aiming the laser at them, they were doubling the rate of pulsation. Like if they were answering. It could be a photon-photon interaction effect, but something has happened. And also, I did something myself with something that is here, and I noticed something very similar. But this happened also with car headlights people were aiming car headlights, and the phenomenon was changing. Okay, so I think I have a strategy also for measuring a possible intelligence of the phenomenon. It could be plasma life theory, or it could be really something solid, and the plasma that we see is only something that is surrounding a solid surface due to the fact that it's there is a strong electric field that is on a superconducting material that we don't have yet, that would create a plasma around. So I think it's possible to demonstrate that. But clearly, if you meet alien beings, okay, you film them, even if they give you a DNA or something, everyone would say this is CGI, computer generated imaging.
Right. So you said you had a theory about how we could test this. Were
Yes.
they theories that you described already, or would you like to briefly lay that out?
I already published this somewhere at the Journal of Consciousness Studies, edited by Professor Stuart Emmeroff, and I presented this idea with a colleague of mine in Austria, in Salzburg, in 2007. So I already, it's a little article, but and I discussed this in a speculative book that I published in English, where extensively I speak qualitatively, scientifically based, but speculatively. So it's a speculation, it's not, but logical, which is called the hyperspace of consciousness, published 10 years ago, first by publishing house in Sweden that is out of press, and then, which is in press, by Buzzword Books Australia, still available. Okay, I can send you a copy if you want.
I would love that. Thank you. And I will direct people to
Thank you.
where they can find this book and that journal article. In our last few minutes here, I'd love to ask you something that struck me in some other interviews you did, was you have a very beautiful and interesting relationship in your life, in that your wife is very open to the more spiritual and magical realms of existence, or sets of ideas around these phenomena and around other phenomena. And it occurred to me that I wanted to ask about whether and how you inspire each other, perhaps you adding analytical theory to the way she thinks about things, and maybe perhaps she opens your mind and helps you stay fresh and sort of susceptible to thinking on a more magical plane. And I thought maybe you'd like to speak to that interaction.
What I love of my wife, Susan Demeter, is that she, yes, is interested in magic mostly, and historically she published an important books about Cosmic Witch, it's called, the history of witches in the past, and then there is something very interesting here, and she is a strong believer in science, in the scientific method, so much that she went to manifest on the roads with cartels showing no one can touch science. Okay, so Trumpy should read it and learn something.
Yeah.
But so I learned a lot from her. I was stimulated by her in that way, and in looking at her studies, and she studied also UFOs. For the military college of Ontario in Canada, of the military in Canada, with an important investigation about UFO witness. She was charged by a professor. She was an assistant of a professor, so she did a very important job in a very balanced way, very rational, at the same time interested in apparitions, but she believes in science. I, in the past, thought one thing about so-called magic, the witches, what they were doing. Maybe Jesus Christ too. Who knows? He was a witch, I think. What would have happened if technology had developed not from science, but from witchcraft?
Mm.
So, is it possible to create a technology from witchcraft? Are we so sure that what we are seeing in the sky, if it's true, is coming from a scientific knowledge, or is it something a way to manipulate nature to do things? Okay, maybe because the point is that we have a wonderful science, but we don't know yet what is the interaction between matter and consciousness, between the two things. Okay, someone, maybe some witches knew that, and in that case, consciousness, there could be a physics about that, could manipulate the world, even gravity, for instance. So this is an hypothesis, of course. But what would happen? What if these guys, if they're real, uh, don't even know what is a quark? Simply, they live instinctively like birds, but they are able to fly. Birds are not intelligent, but they are able to fly. What if these people were able to invent a technology, a practical way to do things from the basis of their magic? So this is something that I've been thinking. I like to fantasize sometimes, but not too much. And yes, anyway, my wife has um, triggered me a lot, and she's going on triggering, and they think I trigger her too. Yes.
And were you working on, or are you still working on, a work about the afterlife together?
Yes. Yes. We worked. We did. How to say, pre-publication, but it's been reviewed several times, but not yet published on a peer review, because we would like to make a book to expand that article. And you can find it, it's 40 pages, on my ResearchGate. It's the last published article. So from that, we are going to derive a book that describes why we think that life continues, and without any need of believing in any god, but simply as a physical mechanism that is based on quantum mechanics. Of course, with all respect for the people who have faith in God, in religion, total respect, but it's not necessary. It's a physical mechanism. It's practically transition from the worm to the butterfly. It's normal. Nature is giving us many metaphors from which we might learn many things and trigger our brain. Okay.
Well, I'm excited to read that. And I'm sensitive to your time now, so I'm going to let us go. But on our way out, I want to ask, where can people find you? And is there anything that you'd like to leave us with that you think we didn't cover in this conversation?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is that if there is any possible financer that is listening this, I would say, interview, I am a physicist. I am very serious, very Teutonic and determined. And if you are interested to finance what you heard, I'm ready to show you all the documents and discuss with you at any time. The other thing is that to the youngsters of the world, I would say you might be interested in these things, but first you have to, I would say, create a very solid preparation in the scientific method. absolutely. So physics, mathematics in particular, that's the first thing that they have to do. Logic, you're always starting from that and uh, get very high points. And that's the first thing. Other things that I would like to say, well, yes, but how to say, personal experiences. I had personal experiences, but this is top secret, and I cannot speak about that for now. It's better not. But I did have experiences, like many had, and the reason why I choose to study physics and astronomy, mathematics, is that I knew that's the only way to face the problem and to possibly solve it.
Wow. That's an exciting little dangling magical tidbit there. And I think I really appreciate that you took your mystical experiences and turned them into rigorous interrogation of the nature of reality.
Exactly. That's what I try, at least.
Well, I will point people to your website and many of the links that we spoke about today, massimoteodorani.com. And also I'll get them some links to your journal and your books and stuff. So people listening can look in the description of this episode and find things there. I hope if you are interested, maybe we can talk again in years to come if there's new information in the field or you'd like to promote a book. Because
I would be very glad with that. And it would be my duty to inform you if there is something new, or if I travel to Zeta Reticuli or somewhere else, or Zeta Ridiculi, whatever. And I will tell you anyway.
And I will tell you if any rich, mysterious counts contact me looking for scientists to fund.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. This was a really fun conversation. I'm very grateful for you sharing your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure for me.
And that's the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening or watching. If you like WTUFO and you want it to keep existing, support us at patreon.com/WTUFO or on YouTube or on Buzzsprout for as little as you want per month. Patreon or YouTube or Buzzsprout, this show is brought to you by you. So thank you very much for your support. I hope you keep listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.